Here's what Adventure Time would look like if it was live action. Let's get into it. For Finn, we've got the usual and unusual. Obviously, Tom Holland came up, so he gets thrown in the ring. Then there's Patton Oswalt. This one was clearly a joke, but I like making art, so here's that. Another great option would be Leo Woodall of White Lotus Season 2 fame. I did have another commenter suggest young Leonardo DiCaprio in the role, which I'm not going to count for arbitrary reasons, but I figure you deserve to see how good that would actually look. I think Holland takes the win on this one, while obviously Patton Oswalt is the loser. That all said, I think the reality is that an unknown child actor would be best in the part. But that's no fun running through AI, so whatever. Jake, meanwhile, would have to be CGI, and played by voice actor John DiMaggio. Kinda like how he'd have to play Bender in live-action Futurama. It just makes sense. That said, the same user who suggested Patton Oswalt for Finn also suggested Seth Rogen as Jake, and frankly, I just need to see that visual. Weird. Okay, one more for the sake of the video's format, Danny DeVito. So let's take a look at that atrocity. Obviously, DiMaggio wins, but between Seth Rogen and Danny DeVito, I'll give DeVito the edge since he's already about the right size. Now, Ice King, let's say Nicolas Cage would be great in the role. He's got the wild side of Ice King down, but it's in his scenes as Simon that we'll really get to see him show his range. My other pick is a long shot, but how about Crispin Glover? Dude's a certified weirdo in all the best ways, and he'd absolutely visually knock it out of the park as Simon. Or Jack Black for the role, though to me Ice King seems a little too similar to Bowser, but, you know, to each their own. I gotta go with Cage on this one. His Ice King would be epic, and I think a lot of people would be pleasantly surprised by his softer side. The worst pick to me is Jack Black. Princess Bubblegum will need a sense of authority while also being hella cute. Dove Cameron would slay in the role. Don't worry, I'll never say that word again. Sydney Sweeney, which could just work. She's got a natural sort of self-assuredness that I think would work great for PB. And then this article I found on Bustle suggested Anna Kendrick, which is an inspired choice, but I actually think their pick for Flame Princess, Alison Brie, would ultimately be the better choice. And I'm giving it to Alison Brie. I think her role as Annie in Community more than qualifies her for the nerdy commander that is PB. My choice of Dove Cameron is probably the least of the options, but I stand by it. Up next, Marceline. This one seems obvious from a fan casting perspective. Jenna Ortega. She's already Wednesday, has a firm foothold in the horror genre, and she even learned to play the cello for that aforementioned role, meaning that she could almost certainly learn to shred with a guitar for this one. Another suggestion is Zendaya, presumably because she's also a go-to for uninspired fan casting everywhere. I throw in Bustle's pick as well. Kristen Ritter definitely has the look down, but best of the bunch has to be Jenna Ortega. She's got that cool, creepy thing down to a fine science. The worst has to go to Zendaya, who wouldn't be bad, but it's a pretty uninspired pick in my unsolicited opinion. Going back to Patton Oswalt for a second, I think he'd make a great Peppermint Butler. My main man Hayden suggested Bill Hader and Seth Rogen as Banana Guards, which is just a great image. Thank you for that one. For the Earl of Lemongrab, we've got recent Best Supporting Actor winner Kieran Culkin. Look, he's got to go somewhere for that post-Oscar slump. Oh, and just because I'd like to see what our poor AI artist comes up with, how about Meryl Streep as Tree Trunks? Cool. When it comes to plot, oh boy, guys, I don't know. This just seems like a bad idea.
That idea is terrible.
The best option here is probably to have it be a time travel flick, I guess, with Finn and Jake thrown through time via some magical wibbly-wobbly. We get various instances of time travel throughout the series, but for the sake of simplicity, we'll just assume there's some new method. Perhaps Princess Bubblegum finally creates a legitimate time machine, or some wizard can utilize a powerful item to open a time portal a la Simon in the episode Betty. Either which way, Finn and Jake have to be sent to the times just following the Mushroom War. This will at least give us a more live-action friendly world to explore, something more akin to a Mad Max sequel than what you'd find in the Land of Ooo. We'd still want plenty of whimsy and Ooo-based silliness, plus it gives us a chance to explore a less traversed world that the creators can have a little more freedom to utilize. After all, we don't want to mess with Adventure Time's convoluted timeline, so might as well throw in a self-contained adventure in the before times. Time. That's not to say that we wouldn't get creatures, though. As seen in episodes like Simon and Marcy, we'll get oozers and other mutants for them to fight. Speaking of Simon and Marceline, though, this might be a great way to further explore their adventures together. As we've already seen, a real-life Ice King would be a horror to witness, but there's a chance that we could make do with Simon early in his transformation. Their storyline, separate from that of Finn and Jake, could go down similar to The Last of Us, albeit with a more family-friendly execution. As far as the main plot with Finn and Jake, how about, again, I'm just spitballing here, how about they get trapped in the past and have to make their way out, and in doing so they wind up having to contend with an earlier version of the Lich. This would lead to plenty of action and excitement, and allow us to bring in someone like Willem Dafoe as the Lich, or Ron Perlman, actually, would really work well, for obvious reasons. Of course, the heroes wouldn't be able to defeat the Lich, but their escape can be victory enough. Or he just gets, like, a really creepy cameo. I don't know, I just like the idea of the bad guy from Streets of Fire as the Lich. Anyway, Finn and Jake have to undergo a series of trials that would be more in line with classic action-adventure storytelling. You know, because it's adventure time. Let's see the boys do some adventuring. And these various sequences could even indirectly result in Simon and Marceline getting out of some life or death situation. This would give us a perfectly simple little retcon to the original timeline. Gosh, that's terrible. That is really bad. That is awful storytelling. You know what I'd really like to see in the comments today? Paragraphs of fanfiction detailing how you'd make a live-action Adventure Time. Let's pretend you're like me and you get paid to answer inane questions. What would your live-action Adventure Time look like? Let's consider the key differences between the show and its live-action interpretation. As noted in your comments, Adventure Time really only works with its unique art style. As such, whatever live-action version we hypothetically come up with is inherently flawed. It loses the magic of animation and falls flat as a result. That's the main reason I think going back in time would work so well, because if you don't have to recreate the complete land of Ooh, then most of the really hard work disappears. Suddenly, Amy Schumer's lumpy space princess isn't even necessary. That all said, where there's a will, there's a way. Somewhere out there, some genius has the perfect Hollywood pitch for a live-action Adventure Time. And that genius ain't me, kid. So what do you say? Is a live-action Adventure Time something that could work, or is it another one of those ideas we should have just kept to ourselves? Let me know in the comments, and until next time, thank you for watching ScreenRant.